Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be back with you again. Although it sure did seem like the last time we were together that we were almost at the end of the book, weren't we? When we read those last words of poor King Tyrion, when the eagle had brought him that terrible message that Cair Paravel had been captured, it was full of Kellermeans, and there were dead Narnians everywhere, and that his wonderful, faithful centaur Runewit had been killed, and his army wasn't coming, and Tyrion said, looking at the children with great dismay, he said, "So, Narnia is no more." Well, we're actually only, look, halfway through the book, so there must be more. Let's hope there's some good news coming. All right, let's read chapter 9, which is called The Great Meeting on Stable Hill. For a long time they could not speak or even shed a tear. Then the unicorn stamped the ground with his hoof and shook his mane and spoke. "Sire," he said, "there is now no need of counsel. We see that the ape's plans were laid deeper than we dreamed of. Doubtless he has long been in secret council with the Tisroc, and as soon as he had found the lion's skin, he sent word to him to make ready with his navy for the taking of Cair Paravel and all of Narnia. Nothing remains now for us 7 but to go back to Stable Hill and proclaim the truth and take the adventure that Aslan sends us. And if by some great marvel we defeat those 30 or so Calormenes who were with the ape, then we will just turn again and die in battle with the far greater army that'll be marching soon from Cair Paravel." Tyrion nodded, but he turned to the children and he said, "Now, friends, it's time for you to go back into your own country. No doubt you have done all that you have said that you would do, all that you were sent to do." But we've done nothing," said Jill, who was shivering, not with fear exactly, but because everything was so horrible. "No," said the king, "you loosed me from the tree. You glided before me like a snake last night into the wood and took Puzzle. And you, Eustace, killed your man, but you are too young to share in such a bloody end as we others are going to meet tonight. Or maybe we'll meet it in 3 days hence, but I entreat you, nay, I command you, return to your own place. I should be put to shame if I let such young warriors fall in battle by my side." "No, no, no," said Jill, very white when she began speaking, and then suddenly very red, and then very white again. "We won't. I don't care what you say. We're going to stick with you no matter what happens, aren't we, Eustace?" "Yes," said Eustace, "but there's no need to get so worked up about it." Eustace had stuck his hands in his pockets, forgetting how very odd it looks when you're wearing a chainmail shirt. "Because, you see, we don't have any choice. What's the good of talking about going back? How? We've got no magic to do it." That was very good sense. But for the moment Jill hated Eustace for saying it. He was fond of being dreadfully matter-of-fact when other people got excited. We've seen that before, haven't we? When Tyrion realized that the 2 strangers could not get home unless Aslan suddenly whisked them away, he next wanted them to go across the southern mountains into Archenland, where they might possibly be safe. But they didn't know their way, and there was nobody to send with them. And also, as Poggin said, once the Calormenes had Narnia, they would certainly take Archenland next in the next week or 2. The Tisroc had always wanted to have these northern countries for his own. In the end, Eustace and Jill begged so hard that Tyrion said that they could come with them and take their chances, or, as he much more sensibly put it, the adventure that Aslan has for them. The king's first idea was that they should not go back to Stable Hill. They were sick of the very name of it by now, until after dark. But the dwarf told them that if they arrived there in broad daylight, they would probably find the place deserted, except perhaps for a Calormene sentry. The beasts were far too frightened by what the ape and Ginger had told them about this new angry Aslan, or Tashlan, to go near it, except when they were called together for those horrible midnight meetings. And Calormenes are not very good woodsmen. Puggin thought that even by daylight they could easily get around to someone behind the stable without being seen. This would be much harder to do once the night had come, and the ape might be calling the beasts together, and all the Calormenes would be on duty. And when the meeting did begin, they could leave Puzzle completely out of sight until the moment when they wanted to produce him. This was obviously a good thing, for their only chance was to give the Narnians a sudden surprise. So everyone agreed, and the whole party set off on a new line, northwest, toward that hated hill. The eagle sometimes flew to and fro above them, and sometimes he perched on Puzzle's back. No one, not even the king himself, except in some great need, would dream of riding on a unicorn. This time Jill and Eustace walked together. They had been feeling very brave when they were begging to be allowed to come with the others, but now they didn't feel brave at all. "Pole," said Eustace in a whisper, "I may as well tell you that I've got the wind up." That's an English expression for I'm scared to death. "Oh, you're all right, Scrub," said Jill. "You can fight, but I'm just shaking, if you want to know the truth." "Oh, shaking's nothing," said Eustace. "I feel like I'm going to be sick." "Don't talk about that, for goodness sake," said Jill. They went on in silence for a moment or two. "Pole," said Eustace presently. "What?" said she. "What'll happen if we do get killed here?" "Well, we'd be dead, I suppose." "But, I mean, what'll happen in our own world? Shall we wake up and find ourselves back on that train? Or shall we just vanish and never be heard of anymore? Or shall we be dead in England?" "Well, I never thought of that." "It'll be bad for Peter and the others if they saw me waving out of the window, and then when the train comes in, we are nowhere to be found. Or if they found if we're dead over there in England." "Ugh," said Jill, "what a horrible idea." "It wouldn't be horrid for us," said Eustace. "We wouldn't be there." "I almost wish—" "No, I don't, though," said Jill. "What were you going to say?" "Well, I was going to say that I almost wish we'd never come, but I don't. Even if we are killed, I'd rather be killed fighting for Narnia than grow up stupid and old at home and perhaps go about in a wheelchair and die in the end." "Or be smashed up by British railways?" "Why'd you say that?" "Well, when that awful jerk came, the one that seemed to throw us into Narnia, I thought that it was the beginning of a railway accident, so I was jolly glad to find us here instead." While Jill and Eustace were talking about this, the others were discussing their plans and becoming less miserable. That was because they were now thinking of what must be done this very night, and the thought of what had happened to Narnia, the thought that all her glories and her joys were over, was pushed away to the back part of their minds. The moment they stopped talking, it would come right out again and make them wretched again, but they kept on talking. Puggin was really quite cheerful about the night's work they were going to do. He was sure that the boar and the bear and probably all the dogs would come over to their side at once. And he couldn't believe that all the dwarfs would stick to Griffle. And fighting by firelight and sneaking in and out among the trees would be an advantage for the weaker side. And then, if they could win tonight, need they really throw away their lives by meeting the main Calormen army in a few days? Why not hide in the woods or even way up high on the western waste behind the waterfall and live there like outlaws? There they might actually get stronger and stronger, for talking beasts and Archenlanders would be joining them every day. And then at last they would come out of hiding and sweep the Calormenes, who maybe would have gotten careless by then, sweep them right out of the country, and Narnia would be revived. After all, something like that had happened at the time of King Mirez. And when Tyrion heard all this, he thought, but what about Tash? And felt that in his bones that none of this was really going to happen, but he didn't say so. When they got nearer to Stable Hill, of course, everyone became quiet. Then the real woodland work began. From the moment at which they first saw the hill till the moment when they all arrived at the back of the stable took over 2 hours. It was the sort of thing you couldn't really describe properly unless you wrote pages and pages about it. The journey from each bit of cover to the next was a separate adventure, and there were very long waits in between, and several false alarms. If you were a good Girl Scout or a good Boy Scout, then you will already know what that must have been like. By about sunset, they were all safe in a clump of holly bushes about 15 yards behind the stable. They all munched some biscuit and lay down. Then came the worst part, waiting. Luckily for the children, they slept for a couple of hours, but of course they woke up when the night grew cold, and what was worse, they woke up very thirsty and with no chance of getting a drink. Puzzle just stood and shivered a little with nervousness and said nothing. But Tyrion, with his head against Jewel's side, slept as soundly as if he were in his royal bed at Cair Paravel, till the sound of a gong beating woke him up. And he sat up and saw that there was firelight on the other side of the stable, and he knew that the hour had come. "Kiss me, Jewel," he said, "for certainly this is our last night on earth. And if ever I have offended against you in any matter, great or small, please forgive me now." "Oh, dear king," said the unicorn, "I almost wish you had, so that I could forgive you. Farewell. We have known great joys together. If Aslan gave me my choice, I would choose no other life than the life I have had, and no other death than the death we are going to." Then they woke up Farsight the eagle, who was asleep with his head under his wing. It made him look as if he had no head at all, and they crept forward to the stable. Did I miss a picture that I didn't show you? Yes, I did. This is them creeping through the woods up to Stable Hill, hiding behind the bushes, inch by inch. They left Puzzle, not without a kind word, for no one was angry with him now, just behind the stable, telling him not to move until someone came out to fetch him, and they took up their positions at one end of the stable. And here's a picture that you can see Puzzle behind the stable, and they're here hiding at one end of the stable. And here's the big bonfire here, and you can see a Calormene sentry right there. Okay. The bonfire had not been lit for long and was just beginning to blaze up. It was only a few feet away from them, and the great crowd of Narnian creatures was on the other side of it, so that at first Tyrion could not see them very well, though of course he saw dozens of eyes shining in the bright light, the reflection of the fire, like you've seen a rabbit's or a cat's eyes in the headlight of a car. And just as Tyrion took his place, the gong stopped beating, and from somewhere on his left, 3 figures appeared. One was Rishtatar Khan, the Calormene captain. The second was the ape. He was holding on to the Tarkhan's hand with one paw, and he kept whimpering and muttering, "Not so fast, don't go so fast. I'm not at all well. Oh, my poor head. These midnight meetings are getting to be too much for me. Apes aren't meant to be up at night. It's not as if I were a rat or a bat. Oh, my poor head." On the other side of the ape, walking very softly and stately, with his tail straight up in the air, came Ginger the cat. Maybe if I showed you this picture again, we could see them a little better here. So here's Ginger the cat right there, and here's the ape holding on to the Rishtatar Khan's hand and moaning about his poor head. They were heading for the bonfire and were so close that Tyrion thought that they would have seen him at once if they had looked in the right direction, but fortunately they did not. But Tyrion heard Rishta say to Ginger in a low voice, "Now, cat, to your post. See you play your part well." "Meow, meow, count on me," said Ginger. Then he stepped away beyond the bonfire and sat down in the front row of the assembled beasts, in the audience, you might say. For really, as it happened, the whole thing was rather like a play in a theater. The crowd of Narnians were like the people in the seats, The little grassy place just in front of the stable where the bonfire burned and the ape and the captain stood to talk was like the stage. The stable itself was like the scenery at the back of the stage. And Tyrion and his friends were like people peering around from behind the scenery. It was a splendid position. If any of them stepped forward into the full firelight, all eyes would be fixed on him at once. On the other hand, as long as they stood still at the end wall of the stable, it was 100 to 1 against their being noticed. Rishtatar Khan dragged the ape up close to the fire, and the two of them turned to face the crowd. And this, of course, meant that their backs were toward Tyrion and his friends. "Now, monkey," said Rishtatar Khan in a low voice, "say the words that wiser heads have put into your mouth, and hold up your head." And as he spoke, he gave the ape a little kick from behind with the point of his shoe. "Oh, leave me alone," muttered Shift. But he sat up straighter and began in a louder voice. "Now listen, all of you. A terrible thing has happened, a wicked thing, the wickedest thing that was ever done in Narnia. And Aslan—" "Tashlan, fool," whispered Rishtatar Khan. "Tashlan, I mean, of course, is very angry about it." There was a terrible silence while the beasts waited to hear what new trouble was in store for them. The little party by the end wall of the stable also held their breath. What on earth was coming now? "Yes," said the ape, "at this very moment, when the terrible one is among us, there in the stable just behind me, one wicked beast has chosen to do what you would think no one would dare to do, even if he were 1,000 miles away. It has dressed itself up in a lion's skin and is wandering around in these woods pretending to be Aslan." Jill wondered for a moment if the ape had gone mad. Was he going to tell the whole truth? A roar of horror and rage went up from the beasts. "Grrr!" came the growls. "Who is he? Where is he? Let me get my teeth into him." "It was seen last night," screamed the ape, "but it got away. It's a donkey, a common miserable donkey. If any of you see that donkey—" "Grrr," growled the beasts. We will. He'd better keep out of our way." Jill looked at the king. His mouth was open in horror. And then she understood the devilish cunning of the enemy's plan. By mixing a little truth with it, they had made their lie far stronger. What was the good now of telling the beasts that a donkey had been dressed up as a lion to deceive them? The ape would only say, "That's just what I've been telling you." What was the good of showing them Puzzle in his lion's skin? They would only tear him to pieces. "That's taken the wind out of our sails," whispered Eustace. "The ground is taken out from under our feet," said Tyrion. "Cursed cleverness," said Poggin. "I'll be sworn that this is a lie of Ginger's making." Chapter 10. Who will go into the stable? Jill felt something tickling her ear. It was Jewel the unicorn whispering to her with the wide whisper of a horse's mouth. As soon as she heard what he was saying, she nodded and tiptoed back to where Puzzle was standing. Quickly, she cut the cords that bound the lion skin to him. It wouldn't do for him to be caught with that on, after what the ape had said. She would like to have hidden the skin somewhere very far away, but it was just too heavy. The best she could do was to kick it among the bushes in the thicket. Then she made signs to Puzzle to follow her, and they both joined the others. The ape was speaking again. "And after that horrible thing like that, Aslan Tashlan is angrier than ever. He says he's been a great deal too good to you, coming out every night to be looked at. Well, he's not coming out anymore." Howls and mewings and squeals and grunts were the animal's answers to this, but suddenly quite a different voice broke in with a loud laugh. "Hark what the monkey says," it shouted. "We know why he isn't going to bring his precious Aslan out. I tell you why, because he hasn't got him. He never did have anything except an old donkey with a lion's skin on its back, and now that he's lost that, he doesn't know what to do." Tyrion couldn't see the faces on the other side of the fire very well, but he guessed that this was Griffel, the chief dwarf. And he was quite certain of it when, a second later, all the dwarfs' voices joined in singing, "He doesn't know what to do, doesn't know what to do." "Silence!" thundered Rishtatar Khan. "Silence, children of mud! Listen to me, you other Narnians, lest I command my warriors to fall upon you with the edge of the sword." Miss Peggy is not used to talking like that. "The Lord Shift has already told you of that wicked donkey. Do you think because of him there is no real Tashlan in the stable? Do you? Beware, beware." "No, no," shouted most of the crowd, but the dwarf said, "That's right, Darky, you've got it. Come on, monkey, show us what is in the stable. Seeing is believing." When next there was a moment's quiet, the ape said, "You dwarfs think you're very clever, don't you? But not so fast. I never said you couldn't see Tashlan. Anyone who likes can see him." Now the whole assembly was silent. And after a minute, the bear began in a slow, puzzled voice. "I don't quite understand all this," he grumbled. "I thought you said—" "You thought," said the ape, "as if anyone could call what goes on in your head thinking. But he's not coming out. You have to go in and see him." "Oh, thank you," said a dozen voices. "That's what we wanted. We can go in and see him face to face. And now he'll be kind, and it'll be all as it used to be." And the birds chattered, and the dogs barked excitedly. And then suddenly there was a great stirring and a noise of creatures rising to their feet, and in a second the whole lot of them would have been rushing forward and trying to crowd into the stable altogether. But the ape shouted, get back, quiet, not so fast." The beasts stopped, many of them with one paw up in the air, many with tails wagging, all of them with their heads over to one side. "I thought you said—" began the bear, but Shift interrupted. "Anyone could go in, but one at a time. Who'll go in first?" He didn't say he was feeling very kind. He's been licking his lips a lot lately since he swallowed up the Wicked King the other night. He's been growling a good deal this morning. "I wouldn't much like going into that stable myself, but just as you please. Wouldn't you like to go in first? Don't blame me if he swallows you whole or blasts you into a cinder with the terror of his eyes. That's your affair. Now then, who's first? What about one of you dwarfs?" "Dilly, come and be killed," sneered Griffel. "How do we know what you got in there?" "Ho, ho," said the ape. "So you're beginning to think that there is something there, eh? Well, all of you beasts were making noise enough a minute ago. What struck you all dumb all of a sudden? Who's going in first?" But all the beasts stood looking at one another and began backing away from the stable. Very few tails were wagging now. The ape waddled to and fro, jeering at them. "Ha ha!" he chuckled. "I thought you were all so eager to see Tashlan face to face. Changed your mind, eh?" Tyrion bent his head to hear something that Jill was trying to whisper in his ear. "What do you think is really inside the stable?" she said. "Who knows?" said Tyrion. "Two Calormenes with drawn swords, likely as not, one on each side of the door." "You don't think it might be, Tash?" "Tash himself?" whispered Tyrion. "There's no knowing. But courage, child. We are all between the paws of the true Aslan." Then a most surprising thing happened. Ginger the cat said, in a cool, clear voice, not at all as if he were excited, "I'll go in, if you like." Every creature turned and fixed their eyes on the cat. "Mark their subtleties, sire," said Puggin to the king. "That cursed cat is in on the plot, in the very center of it. Whatever is in the stable will not hurt him, I'll be bound. Then Ginger will come back out again and say he has seen some wonder." But Tyrion had no time to answer him. The ape was calling the cat to come forward. "Oh," said the ape, "so you, Kitty Cat, would like to look on him face to face, would you? Come on, then. I'll open the door for you. Don't blame me if he scares the whiskers off your face. That's your affair." And the cat got up and came out of his place in the crowd and walked primly and daintily with his tail in the air and not one hair of his sleek coat out of place. It came on until it had passed the fire and was so close to Tyrion that from where he stood with his shoulder against the end wall, he could look right into its face. But its big green eyes never blinked. "Cool as a cucumber," muttered Eustace. "It knows it has nothing to fear." The ape, chuckling and making faces, shuffled across beside the cat, put up his paw, drew the bolt, and opened the door. Tyrion thought he could hear the cat purring as it walked through the dark doorway. "Ow!" The most horrible caterwaul you ever heard made everybody jump. You would have been wakened yourself. You have been wakened yourselves by cats quarreling on the roof in the middle of the night. You know the sound. But this was worse. The ape was knocked head over his heels by Ginger coming back out of the stable at top speed. And there's the cat knocking the ape over. Boy, that cat is really running fast. If you had not known he was a cat, you might have thought he was a ginger-colored streak of lightning. He shot across the open grass, back into the crowd. Nobody wants to meet a cat in that state. You could see the animals getting out of his way left and right. He dashed up a tree, whisked around, and hung head downward. His tail was bristled out until it was nearly as thick as his whole body, and his eyes were saucers of green fire, and along his back every hair stood on end. "I'd give my beard," said Poggin, "to know whether that brood is only acting or whether it really found something in there so terrifying." "Peace, friend," said Tyrion, for the captain and the ape were also whispering, and he wanted to hear what they said. He did not succeed, except that he heard the ape once more whimpering, "My head, my head." But he got the idea that those two were almost as puzzled by the cat's behavior as he was himself. "Now, Ginger," said the captain, "enough of that noise. Tell us what you saw." "Ow, ow, ow, ow!" screamed the cat. "Are you not called a talking beast?" said the captain. "Then hold that devilish noise and talk." What followed was rather horrible. Tyrion felt quite certain, and so did the others. The cat was trying to say something, but nothing came out of his mouth except the ordinary ugly cat noises you might hear from any frightened old tomcat in the backyard in England. And the longer he caterwauled, the less like a talking beast he looked. Uneasy whimperings and little sharp squeals broke out from among the other animals. "Look, look," said the voice of the bear. "It can't talk. It's forgotten how to talk. It's gone back to being a dumb beast. Look at its face." And everybody saw that it was true. Then the greatest terror of all fell upon those Narnians, for every one of them had been taught, when only a chick or a pup, how Aslan, at the beginning of the world, had turned the beasts of Narnia into talking beasts and warned them that if they weren't good, they might one day be turned back again into the poor witless animals like other countries have. "And now it is coming upon us," they moaned. "Mercy, mercy," wailed the beast. "Spare us, Lord Shift. Stand between us and Aslan. You must go in and speak to him for us. We dare not, we dare not." Ginger disappeared further up into the tree, and no one ever saw him again. Tyrion stood with his hand on his sword hilt and his head bowed. Sometimes he thought it would be best to draw his sword at once and rush upon the Calormenes. The next moment he thought it might be better to wait and see what might happen next. And now a new turn came. "My father," came a clear, ringing voice from the left of the crowd. And Tyrion knew at once that it was one of the Calormenes speaking. For in the Tisrock's army, the common soldiers call their officers "my master," but the officers call their senior officers "my father." Jill and Eustace didn't know this, but after looking this way and that, they saw the speaker. For, of course, people at the sides of the crowd were easier to see than the people in the middle, where the glare of the fire made it all look rather black beyond it. He was a young man, tall and slender, and even rather beautiful in his dark, haughty Calormen way. "My father," he said to the captain, "I also desire to go in." "Peace, Emeth," said the captain. "Who called you to council? Does it become a boy to speak?" "My father," said Emeth, "truly I am younger than you, and yet I am also a Tarkhan, with blood of the Tarkhans in me, even as thou art, and I am also a servant of Tash. Therefore—" "Silence," said Rishta Tarkhan. "Am I not your captain? You have nothing to do with this stable. It is for the Narnians." "No, my father," said Emeth. "You have said that their Aslan and our Tash are all the same, and if that is true, then that is Tash in yonder. And now you say that I have nothing to do with him? Gladly I would die 1,000 deaths if I could look on the face of Tash." "You are a fool, and you don't understand anything," said Rishta Tarkhan. "These are high matters." Emeth's face grew sterner. "Then is it not true that Tash and Aslan are all one? Has the ape lied to us?" "Of course they're all one," said the ape. "Swear it, ape," said Emeth. "Dear," whimpered Shift, "I wish you'd all stop bothering me. My head aches. Yes, I swear it." "Then, my father," said Emeth, "I am utterly determined to go in." "You are a fool," began Rishta Tarkhan, but at once the dwarfs began shouting, "Come along, Darky, why don't you let him go in? Why do you let Narnians go in, but you keep your own people out? What have you got in there that you don't want your own people to see?" Tyrion and his friends could only see the back of Rishta Tarkhan, so they never knew what his face looked like as he shrugged his shoulders, and he said, "You all bear witness that I am guiltless of this young fool's blood. Get you in there, rash boy, and hurry." Then, just as Ginger had done, Emeth came walking forward into the open strip of grass between the bonfire and the stable. His eyes were shining, his face very solemn, his hand on his sword hilt, and he carried his head high. Here's a picture of Emeth, the young Calormen soldier. Jill felt like crying when she looked into his face, and Jewel whispered in the king's ear, "By the lion's mane, I almost love this young warrior. Calormen though he is worthy of a better god than Tash." "I really do wish we knew what was in there," said Eustace. Emeth opened the door and went into the black mouth of the stable. He closed the door behind him. Only a few minutes passed, but it seemed longer, before the door opened and a figure in Calormen armor reeled out, fell on its back, and lay still, the door closed behind it. The captain leaned toward it and bent down to stare at his face. He gave a start of surprise. Then he recovered himself and turned to the crowd and cried out, "The rash boy has had his will. He has looked on Tash, and he is dead. Take warning, all of you." We will," said the poor beasts. But Tyrion and his friends stared first at the dead Calormen and then at one another. For being so close, they could see what the crowd further off and behind the fire could not see. This dead man was not Emeth. He was quite different. He was an older man, thicker and not so tall, with a big beard. "Ho, ho, ho," chuckled the ape. "Any more? Anybody else want to go in? Well, as you're all shy, I'll choose the next. You boar, on you come then. Drive him up, Calormens. He shall see Tashalan face to face." "Oh," grunted the boar, rising heavily to his feet. "Come on then, try my tusks." When Tyrion saw the brave beast getting ready to fight for its life, and Calormen soldiers beginning to close in on him with their drawn scimitars, and nobody was going to help, something seemed to burst inside him. He didn't care if this was the best moment to interfere or not. "Swords out," he whispered to the others. "Arrows on the string. Follow me." Next minute, the astonished Narnians saw 7 figures leap forth in front of the stable, 4 of them in shining armor. The king's sword flashed in the firelight as he waved it above his head and cried in a great voice, "Here I stand, Narnia's king, Tirion, in Aslan's name, to prove with my body that Tash is a foul fiend, the ape is a traitor, and these Calormenes are worthy of death. To my side, all true Narnians. Would you wait until your new masters have you killed one by one?" The end of chapter 10. Well, we'll have a long wait until tomorrow night, won't we, when we get to read the next chapters. But we can see that wicked evil seems to be prevailing there in Narnia right at the time. But Tirion has faith in Aslan, and he doesn't care whether Aslan appears or not. He is not going to betray him, and he's going to stand firm, and if he has to die, he dies. He feels that an honorable death fighting for Aslan would be far worse than surrendering to those awful Calormenes and pretending that Tash and Aslan were the same. I wonder if we would be as brave as that when the time comes when we have to take a stand. Are we going to be faithful to Jesus, or are we going to be those who compromise and do things the devil wants us to do just in order to be popular or stay alive maybe someday? We'll pray, won't we, that God will give us the strength to do like Tirion is doing and to stand firm and hold fast and fight to the end. On that happy note, I'm going to say good night for now, and I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow when we read the next 2 chapters of The Last Battle. Bye for now, everybody.